We can't have a situation where the Bahraini people are ignored, the Libyan people who were on the verge of being massacred by Colonel Gaddafi are having international action taken against that regime.
Well, let's look at that, Mr. Shafiq, exactly what you've said. Why do you think there is that difference from the international community? You had said that we cannot have one set of rules basically for one country and another set of rules from the international community's perspective for another country. So why do you think that it exists when we look at the situation that's taking place in Bahrain?
Well, I think it's very much to do with oil. It's very much to do with power in the region. For too long, Western leaders and Western nations have tried to impose their own leaders on those countries. Only a few years ago, Hosni Mubarak was a friend of the West. Zain al-Abidin in Tunisia was a friend. Gaddafi was reintegrated into the international community. And so I think it's important that if we have a standard, as we have here in the West, of promoting democracy, human rights, equality, and justice and fairness, and if we apply those concepts and principles to certain countries in the Middle East, then that's going to be equally applied to places like Bahrain and Israel and Syria and other countries. We've got to allow the people to choose their own destiny, and if the Bahraini government has any humanity, humanity for the suffering that is going on, it would stop this violence, it would stop the torture, it would stop the oppression, and allow the people their democratic right, which is to demonstrate peacefully. And I think that's the other thing, if I may say so, that the demonstrators also have a responsibility to behave responsibly, to not use violence, to not provoke a regime, but to remain peaceful. When those demonstrators start to use violence, then sometimes they use the moral high ground, and I think it's important to maintain the moral high ground.
Okay, well, stay with me, please. I want to switch over to Manama and welcome the head of the Youth Society on Human Rights, Mr. Mohammed Al-Miskati. Thanks so much for being with us, Mr. Miskati. Can you fill us in on the latest that you have from Bahrain today?
Yeah, actually, we still have a huge number of detainees. More than 700 detainees. Still, we have the problem of destroying the mosques in Bahrain. Still, the hospital is controlled by the security forces and military. Still, the people are afraid to go to the hospital with this kind of situation inside the hospital. And still there is arresting people because participate in the fair roundabout. Still the people who fired from job trying to have another opportunity with this kind of situation, because some of the families, the mother and the father fired, and they don't have any source, financial source for their children. So what happened until now? The human rights violation is continued, and still the people are trying to ask for the reforms, and also they are trying to protest everywhere.
Okay, let me turn back to Manchester. Now, you said earlier that basically any government or any regime, any country should allow the people to choose their own destiny. If you look at the situation, let's say from the U.S., being that the U.S. is supporting the Bahraini regime, how likely is that to happen, that the United States would basically allow any country to go in the direction that it wants to go in?
Well, I think the world is changing. The dominance of Western powers is reducing, and we are seeing the re-emergence of the East as not just a political force, but more importantly, an economic force to be reckoned with. Whether it's China, India, Iran, places across the East, Japan, Kuala Lumpur, and Malaysia. These are the countries that are now taking a lead in international affairs. If you look at the role played by Turkey Turkey has been able to get the balance right between authoritarianism that has been practiced with dictatorships in the past and democracy now. And when people are given the choice to choose their own future, they choose their own choice, and that's why you've got a moderate Islamic prime minister in Turkey. And so it's right that Bahraini people have that. This demonstration did not start as a call for the removal of the regime. The monarchy was respected by the demonstrators, as I've been watching the coverage here on Press TV. It was only when the oppression started and the killing started and the massacre started that people felt that the monarchy itself has got to take a responsible role in this, and that's why it's not too late for this regime to stop its attack, to stop the torture, to stop the killing, and to say to the people, the opposition and the demonstrators, we want to build a better future for the people of Bahrain, and we want to do that together in partnership. It can't be done in a matter of a civil war and killing each other.
Now, Mr. Shafiq, you said basically that it's changing and now the East is rising again as opposed to the West. But if we look back, and not that long ago in 2006, we had another election. We had a democratic process that took place in Palestine, and we had Hamas that won. But of course, we know that though the people had chosen a certain direction, it was the U.S. that basically, of course, with Israel, that stopped that from actually happening. My question here is that with the current status quo of things, and being that Bahrain is also where the U.S. Fifth Fleet is located, do you think that they will just stand by and watch the tides turn in a different direction? So far, the U.S. administration has basically been mum on the situation that's happening in Bahrain.
Well, I think in relation to the Palestine issue and in relation to Hamas, whatever one views about Hamas, whatever one's views about the use of rockets and the killing of innocent Israelis, the fact that the people of Palestine elected Hamas as their democratic elected government, and one of the major mistakes, colossal mistakes made by both President Bush and Prime Minister Blair over the previous few years, whilst they were in power, was ignoring the Hamas situation and the fact that they won elections. It makes you look like hypocrites. That if you call for democracy and then democracy doesn't give you what you want, for you to say you're not going to talk to that particular political party in government. And so it's important that in Palestine we have free democratic elections. There's a chance for the Palestinian people to unite and to take on the oppression of the Israelis. I think that's very important, and I think that's what will happen. We are beginning to see recognition from around the world that the Palestinian struggle has gone on for too long, and we need an end to this conflict, and the only way it can end is for Israel to withdraw back to 1967 borders, for there to be a peace treaty, and for there to be an end to violence on both sides.
Mr. Shafiq, my point of this, Mr. Shafiq,
and free from oppression.
Okay, Mr. Shafiq, I don't want to interrupt you, but my point of the Hamas example, because I really don't want to go into the Palestinian issue right now, but in general, just saying when people tend to go exactly like you said, when democracy brings something that the West or certain capitals in the West do not want, usually they do not support it. So with this situation in Bahrain, as more and more pressure comes on the Bahraini regime, my point of it was asking the question, basically, do you think that Washington will stand by and allow the direction to sway away from the supporting the current regime? Will they allow this to happen? Because we know that as the crackdown has continued, it's basically mum has been the word from the Washington administration on the oppression, the repression that is taking place in Bahrain.
Well, I think if you look at the situation in Egypt and Tunisia, the international community, and particularly Western powers, tried to ignore what was going on and try to support the regimes. And what happened in those situations was there was an uproar, not only in those countries that were demonstrating against their brutal leaders, but here in the West. And I think that's what will happen with Bahrain. For the moment, the international community is silent on the suffering of the Bahraini people, but eventually enough will be enough, and change will come.
Okay.
Democracy isn't easy, freedom isn't easy. You've got to struggle for it, you've got to make sacrifices, and that's why I pay tribute to the Bahraini people who are demonstrating, who are sacrificing their lives. And I urge the Bahraini government to do the just thing, to do the Islamic thing. Whatever one's religious affiliation, whether you're a Sunni or a Shia, we're Muslims. We've got to live in peace. We've got to live in unity.
Okay.
And we've got to ensure that we end the oppression.
Well, let me turn quickly back to Manama and get Mr. Mascati in on this. How likely is that to happen, Mr. Mascati? Do you think that as pressure continues to be put on the Bahraini regime, as our guest in Manchester said, that ultimately that the regime will realize the situation and try to do the right thing and actually allow the changes that are necessary and that the people are demanding in Bahrain?
Yes, actually, we say that from long time, from 16th of March when this crackdown started. We say we need the international community to take responsibility of what happened in Bahrain and put the pressure on the authorities to take the reforms what the protests are asking for it as peacefully from 14th February until 16th of March. But until now, we didn't see any kind of pressure from the international community take the responsibility of what happened in Bahrain, especially with the human rights violation. Because if the victims will not get any support, it will be more crackdown, more unrest, politically unrest in Bahrain will be continued because the victims will be continuing suffering of what happened to them.
So
I think,
Mr. Mascati, I'm so sorry. I have to interrupt you because we're out of time, but I appreciate you being with us. From the head of the Youth Society of Human Rights in Manama, and of course from Manchester, Chief Executive of the Ramadan Foundation, Mr. Mohammed Shafiq. We appreciate your contribution to this look in detail at Bahrain. And as always, viewers, we really appreciate you staying with us right here, Press TV. Don't go away because the news is next in less than 4 minutes.